It starts with bacteria, which for more than 1 billion years have been fighting viruses just like we do. In fact, they've had horrible battles with viruses. And what they learned to do was to take a mugshot of a virus that attacks them. In other words, a tiny, tiny snippet of the genetic code of that virus. And they put it into their own DNA in these clustered repeated sequences, now known as CRISPRs. And so when the virus attacks that bacteria again, the bacteria is able to use the mugshot, spot the virus, and chop up its genetic code. What Jennifer Doudna, Emmanuel Charpentier, and the others did is said, okay, we can use that technique to chop up our own DNA at a target that we pick. So that's all CRISPR is a simple molecule. It has a guide RNA that says, here's the piece of genetic code I'm looking for, and it's got a scissors, known as an enzyme. And that guide RNA and the scissors go to a spot in our genetic code and say, that's a sickle cell mutation, chop it out. Or that's a mutation for Huntington's, chop it out. And eventually we can do more complex edits, but that's all it is. And the hard part is not the editing of the cell, but the delivery mechanism to get it into an early stage embryo and implant that in an IVF clinic. Or there's CRISPR treatments that can kill coronavirus, but getting it delivered into the cells of your lung where the coronavirus may be doing the most damage, that's the hard part. In the book, but also while reporting the book, I'm almost hand in hand with her as our views change, as new things happen. And just like Jennifer, I was a little bit resistant to the notion of, well, let's do gene editing, even to fight diseases. That seemed like messing with nature. But when coronavirus came along, I realized, every species, great and small, use all the tricks in their toolbox and all their wiles in order to become healthier and survive. And so should we as a species. That's why we developed these RNA vaccines that tell our cells how to build proteins that'll make us immune to the coronavirus. And it's also when she started seeing children of people with genetic conditions, people with sickle cell, people with cystic fibrosis or Tay cells.
Huntington's, yeah.
Huntington's, which is the most god-awful disease you can possibly imagine. And these people are saying, can't you help? Can't you help? And this technology will indeed help. It's already cured people of sickle cell this past year. It will help. And Jennifer started to say, well, I used to worry that it was immoral maybe to use this technology too fast. But now I worry that it's immoral not to use it when we have such things that we can help cure. So it gave me an open mind, which is what the scientific method is supposed to do, which is my thinking, my theories, they changed as I got new evidence. We ethically use this. And through the book, I go with her and many other great thinkers, religious leaders, ethicists, and say, let's go step by step, because it's a slippery slope. But all slopes are slippery. In order to navigate a slippery slope, it's best to go step by step, preferably hand in hand, and to do it cautiously. So I start by saying, let's look at what I think are the easier cases. And by the way, I don't try to preach in this book. I just try to make sure the reader can say, hey, it's not up to the scientists, it's not up to the politicians, it's up to all of us to figure this out. So we go through the easier cases, such as Huntington's. As you said, Helene, that's a brutal, horrible disease. So yeah, we would probably want to fix that. And secondly, you do sickle cell and you do cystic fibrosis, simple things like that. And you'd also think I would, that it's fine to do it in a living patient. Like Victoria Gray, a Mississippi woman, last year she gave permission for her cells to be edited using CRISPR, and she's been cured of sickle cell. But there's a kid in the book, David Sanchez, who also has sickle cell, and the doctor says, we can edit your reproductive cells so your children and their children won't have sickle cell. He said, well, that's great, but maybe it should be up to the child before you do that. And it makes you think, okay, when you do it in a way that's inheritable, when you're making edits that'll be passed down from generation to generation, that's a line we have to pause before we cross. Another line that I think we have to pause at is, yeah, we want to fix bad genetic conditions. We want to cure diseases. But I think there's a line, although it's a blurry one, between curing a disease and making an enhancement. In other words, if somebody has predisposition to Alzheimer's, that's a pretty brutal thing. And if you could fix the gene so that they wouldn't get Alzheimer's, you'd probably do it. But if you can fix that, you can also add to memory. You can make a kid's memory better. And so that's sort of an enhancement. And I think we have to be careful to do things that are medically called for, but not do enhancements, or at least let's wait a few decades and think this through.